Okay, good morning, everybody. Glad to see you. Everybody's up bright and early this morning. So we'll have a number of things to talk about this morning. First of all, I don't know if we have anybody new this morning that hasn't been here before. Alexis, you were here last week, I believe.
I was the week before.
Okay. So anyway, so we are recording. Want to jump into the agenda because we have several things people have to take off, so we need to get going pretty quickly here. So I want to start with our presentation this morning with Mark Kelly with Fortinet. Had Alexis joined us I guess, a week or so ago, and had a great conversation. He introduced me to Mark and some of the work that Fortinet's doing, particularly a number of the free cybersecurity resources that they bring to the table. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark, so that you can get out of here if you need to. Do you need to share the screen?
Yeah, if that's okay, that'd be great. And thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. And
You bet.
good to meet everybody, and good morning. Thanks for having me here today. All right, let's get started here. So nice to meet everybody. As Steven said, my name is Mark Kelly, and I look after a good portion of what we call our public sector business. So state government, local government, and education as well. I am an Arizonan. I live in Gilbert, Southeast Valley. So it's near and dear to my heart to make sure that all of us are successful in our missions here in public sector. And just to set the stage a little bit, so Fortinet does have products and services as well. From a go-to-market standpoint, we sell devices, we sell things to help secure enterprise networks, small networks, things of that nature. And that's all great and wonderful. Today, I'm going to focus more on the training side of things.
You have to remove the 14. You can't go over 2,000 for it.
Yeah, I didn't ask for that much. I just asked for that 14.
Somebody needs to mute.
I didn't include the utility.
It's Teresa.
Because I thought it was a late fee at first.
So is
Teresa, you need to
there a
mute.
separate bill for that?
No, it's on the same
The rent ledger?
The same ledger. It's included in the rent.
Oh, okay.
But I thought it was a late fee.
As the organizer, you should have the ability, I think, to mute.
Yeah, I was just looking at where to do that. There we go.
So the bill, what I put in allocations don't add up to 2,000.
Steve, just click on her.
I just
pic
did.
on the
Just got it. Okay,
Thanks, Steve.
go ahead.
So yeah, we do have products and services. We're going to focus more on the training aspect of things today. And the good news is it's all free. It's all available for $0. And I'll kind of talk about some examples from our, again, public sector partners that how they're utilizing things like this, and we'll kind of step through that. But essentially, just as a kind of a credibility statement, we've been in business for about 20 years. We're a cybersecurity and networking company. People like to say 1 out of every 2 firewalls shipped in the world comes from Fortinet. Point is, we have a lot of enterprise-based products as well. Our product mix stretches across what we call a MITRE ATT&CK framework. So this is how the bad actors actually get into your network and get information out. We have solutions that fit in each one of these. And again, I won't spend a ton of time on this today, and I think this may be remedial for some folks on the call, but just again, from a breadth perspective, we do offer quite a few things across the cybersecurity landscape. Okay, and into the actual meat of it. So again, we're not here to talk about product. We're not here to talk about things like that. But what we do see, and again, I think you all, from what Steve had said about this group, you all probably see this in real time. Essentially, the point of this slide is there's a lot of ransomware, there's a lot of social engineering going on, there's a lot of breaches happening. We're no exception. We do phishing training on a weekly basis. We do, our departments try to catch us in a phish and try to click on the wrong things, and then, put you into some courses to kind of remediate that behavior. But the point is, the cost of a breach is incredibly high. So this is actually focused on education, so K-12 or higher ed. The global average is almost $4 million per year, or per breach, excuse me. So if this happens, any of the organizations that you work with, that you represent, I'm guessing not a lot of people have an extra $4 million laying around their budget that they just can't wait to remediate a cyber breach, right? That's typically not the case. So not only that, we want to obviously not just fight the fires, but we want to really be a little bit more proactive in terms of defending, our mutual interest against these bad actors. And as far as that, again, from a K-12 perspective, there's about 1,700 schools in 2022 and 27 districts that reported ransomware. And this is just reported. So that doesn't mean that no others happened. It just reported. So, and those that did pay up, about 45% of the districts, they only got about 60% of their data back. So not only are we playing a losing game from an innovation standpoint, where these bad actors are innovating on a continual basis, and we're trying to play catch up. Not only that, if we do pay collectively, we're not getting all that back. The good news is 99% of those districts were covered partially or in full by cyber insurance. So I know the trust here in Arizona is doing a lot of great work and kind of upping the game for districts, so to speak, in terms of things they need to have in place to protect the student data and employee data and things of that nature. But point is, it's not a great battle that we're playing. And quite honestly, besides the cost, your staff or the district staff or in any other organization, it takes up a lot of time to respond to these incidents. So it's not only a pure money perspective, but your productivity is completely sapped from anywhere from days to weeks, and recovery could be up to 9 months. So again, I'm not trying to, instill fear. These are just the facts that we've seen reported over the past number of years on how long it takes to respond to things like this. And it's very impactful. Again, not only from a bottom line and budgeting perspective, but from an actual staffing perspective. Real quick here, this is just an example of some of the things that these bad actors are using. And I'm sure that we've all kind of experienced this in one way or another. So this is a real life example. I did receive an email from this energy savings thing. And if we kind of step through some of the, if you've been through cyber, security or phishing training, you'll kind of see some of these common themes. Point is, it was targeted. I live in Gilbert, like I mentioned, and hey, there's Gilbert energy rebates. I like to save money. That, all right, got my attention a little bit. They kind of step through something that's targeted, but then they also put a time-bound measure to it. So it's, hey, you better do this quickly. You're not going to be able to miss out on this. We may see this show up in other ways, like, hey, my CFO just emailed me and they need me to fill out this financial form and they're in a meeting, don't call. We try to diffuse some of those things that we might normally do to try to validate. And then I also remember from a training, and again, you may all have experienced this as well. If you hover over a link, it'll pop up and you'll see where that link actually goes. And when I did that, that's something I didn't recognize. So that's something that, maybe I'm going to kind of rethink this. I'm not going to click, and I'm just going to have to pass up on this great energy rebate, so to speak. And I actually sent it on to a colleague that's a little bit more technical than myself. And we did find out that it is actually a known phishing attempt. So felt kind of good to avoid that one. But the point is, it's scary out there, right? And a lot of times you'll hear our users are our weakest link, because there's things like this going on all over the place. And if you think about the vectors that we work with, collectively from a public sector standpoint, they're all over the place. Your fridges now, your smart lights, your smart houses, your smart garage door openers, and all sorts of things. Internet of Things is definitely real, and those are all attack vectors these days as well. But on top of that, again, from a government perspective, we talk a lot about SCADA networks and air-gapped networks that are not touching the internet in any way. It's because of these things. We've heard of the pipeline attacks and Colonial Pipeline and things of that nature. Critical infrastructure is tied to all these things as well. So it's very important that obviously we're taking proactive measures. But on top of it, there's power grids, there's all sorts of things, and not limited to smart cars. We have a Tesla at my house, and quite honestly, I'm pretty worried about it every day. My wife and daughters drive it to and from school every day, and I just want to make sure that we're staying safe, because that is an attack vector as well that didn't exist a few years ago. These are all connected devices. So again, point being, there's a lot of things out there. We are all targets. None of us are immune to this. Just really quickly from who is targeted, right? So this is we have an investigative arm called FortiGuard Labs, and we do some response, right? So from an incident response standpoint, and I'll just quickly sum this up, that it's universal, right? Across markets, there's not one thing over another that's targeted. You can vary a little bit by percentage, but point is, none of these categories are 0%. So if we focus on state, local, and education, about 6%, maybe 5 and change percent of these attacks are targeted towards state, local, and education. Again, just illustrating the point that no one's immune to this. But if we look at from an assessed motivation standpoint. So caveat here is we have not interviewed bad actors, but just how we can see what are they after. Most often this is financially motivated. So I talk about paying these ransoms and getting your data back. There are some things just to disrupt, and there are some things from an international state actor, espionage, but then also there's command and control where they just want to take over pieces of information and use those for bad purposes. Most of which, though, again, are financially motivated. So that's their goal, is to get you to pay the ransom, and we'll give you all your data back if you just pay this, $10 million, an untraceable Bitcoin or whatever it may be. So the good news is we are doing things proactively to prevent this. So it's not all just based on fear. And I'll build this out here. We won't spend a ton of time here, but I take this. This is one of our things we share with our partners in terms of continual work, right? We're not going to go through this. Quite honestly, it's a little more technical for my level, but at the same time, the point, it's a continual effort. There's no ending point here. You don't reach a point and say, okay, we're completely protected. We don't have to worry about anything else. The cycle starts over. You need to just continue that journey and continue educating people, continue putting controls in place. And quite honestly, they're going to change so quickly. It's just ongoing in terms of an innovation cycle. So the good news is it's not all fear. There are things that we're doing and partnering, and our great partners are doing as well, and how to prevent this. And I did promise that we're not going to talk product. We're going to talk about free offerings here. The first of which is we've taken a look at those breaches that we talked about, right? And 85% involve the human element. And what is the human element? The human element is someone in your organization or any organization clicking on something, going to a site, allowing those malicious actors into the environment. So if we talk about that, let's break down a little further. What barriers, and this is again from a K-12 perspective, why is this happening? It could be lack of skilled personnel, but also very alarmingly, awareness is very low. And that's something that we can address fairly easily with a little bit of effort. So just in terms of educating folks on what's out there and the social engineering that happens, we've seen there's a great increase in your resiliency against these attacks if people are educated. So we talk about how do we educate people? And in July of last year, we were at the Workforce and Education Summit, and we announced that we were offering training for free for schools nationwide. So if you're a K-12, no questions asked, we're going to give this to faculty and staff without any argument or anything like that. It's completely free. Just like we said the last slide, we want to educate people more. We would love to see school districts specifically increase their skilled personnel and their knowledge. So that's great, but let's take that just one step further. We've also partnered with some districts here locally. For example, Chandler Unified School District, they deployed this and they actually integrated it into their LMS, and it's a really slick investigation. And about 5,000 staff are being currently trained in anti-phishing and really just awareness. Again, like I mentioned, what's going on out there? What are these bad actors trying to do? And how can we prevent this? The good news is this, at the time of this press release in October of last year, it was just faculty and staff. We just announced we are coming out in October of this year with student training as well. So we're taking this one step further, and the students, again, being a part of the organization, that we want to make sure that they're educated and organized as well. So this is now expanded from faculty and staff to students. And we offer that for free to all K-12s across the country. So I saw a couple that are involved in E-rates, working with districts. These are things that there are no strings attached. It's part of our corporate social responsibility that we want to make sure that we get these folks trained. And that's great from an awareness perspective. But another thing that we're doing here, and I'll just fast forward here and how we can work together from a call to action standpoint. We also have free training that we do for certification. So all of the Fortinet employees take levels 1 through 3. There are 7 levels. Our customers from a certified cybersecurity professional are anywhere from levels 5 to 7. The good news is, though, we offer all of these for free. All it takes is a login on our website at training.fortinet.com. The only thing that's not included here is if there's a virtual lab, you do have to pay for that. Or if you want to get actually certified, that's through typically like Pearson VUE, you have to pay for the certification. But the training itself, the self-paced online training, is available and made free to everybody. That has nothing to do with schools, nothing to do with public sector. Anybody universally, you can sign up for free and take that training. So that's good, right? That's great. That's one thing we can do in terms of partnering together. But also, I mentioned a lot of this faculty and staff and student training. Our ask would be that mention this to the districts you may work with or come across. Again, it's not a product-based conversation. There's no strings attached. We just want to make sure that these schools are getting exposure to this training and that they're able to increase their level of experience there. We also have, and Alexis has been very instrumental in this. Arizona Western has officially signed up as an education training partner. We're close to a couple other higher ed institutions in the state that are fairly large that would be very recognizable. We're close to getting that off the ground and getting contracts signed there. But this is another free opportunity for higher ed. We offer courseware and curriculum. So if you want to launch cybersecurity 101 or whatever it may be, an actual course, we provide the faculty with all of the courseware and curriculum so they know structured lessons, they know what to teach, they know how to teach it, there's labs available. And unlike that, I mentioned that free training in that first bullet where labs and certifications are not covered. In this situation, they are. So if I'm a student enrolled in, again, I'm just going to make something up, Arizona Western being an example, I'm in cybersecurity 101. At the end of that course, I actually get a voucher to go take a certification exam for free. So some really interesting things we can do to provide certified cybersecurity professionals entering the job force. A lot of you may be aware that there's a large gap in terms of the jobs that exist in cybersecurity and the qualified individuals to fill those jobs. And this is universal, again, not across public sector, but everywhere. So we have a goal to make sure that we're letting people leave either a 2-year college or a 4-year university with these cybersecurity certifications so they can enter the job force. And there's some interesting conversations that are going on right now in terms of providing that pipeline to maybe a state agency or however that may be for people graduating with an associate's. Let's get them right into a role here in an entry-level role. And then beyond that, again, I mentioned that I focus solely on public sector. My contact information is here, and I'll get this presentation out to Steve so he can make it available to you. But we encourage you to contact us and how we can leverage these, or maybe you have other ideas on how we can use some of these programs. Again, I can't stress enough that these are not paid for engagements, and we do have products and services, but we're not even approaching those. We just want to get people trained and aware and knowledgeable about what's going on around them. So from that perspective, that's the end there, and feel free to open it up for any questions or anything anybody might want to know.
Elena, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I was just wondering, Mark, I know GCU has a pretty significant cybersecurity program. I was just wondering if you partner with those folks in any way.
Today we don't, but just recently we've actually had their CISO, their Mike Manrod. Mike also teaches as well. So we've talked about this program, and there was some intrigue around that in terms of, hey, can we incorporate this, right? And there's another higher ed institution that would have a very recognizable name and logo like GCU. And they have an existing program. So we're going to slide into their program, which I think is key too, right? A lot of times these offerings like, no, you need to just do ours and we won't fit into things. We can absolutely incorporate into existing programs or augment or anything like that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mark, do you want to stop sharing? And we have a couple of other folks who have some questions.
Sure thing. Absolutely.
Okay. So Mala, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Mark, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing all that information and all of the free products as well. What I'd like to know is in your offerings for that you mentioned education in schools, are libraries covered as well? Would you be willing to train library staff?
Mala, I believe we would. And I say that from an unofficial stance. Reason being is obviously from an E-rate perspective, right? Libraries tied very closely with schools. My personal opinion would be a very easy jump to make from schools to schools and libraries. So at a minimum, the free training I mentioned on training.fortinet.com is available, but from a cybersecurity awareness, or SAT as we call it, security awareness and training, I don't know, but I'm happy to follow up on that. My contact information is in this presentation when you see it. I'm happy to collaborate with you offline to see if we can discover a way where we might be able to make this available to libraries as well.
Thank you, Mark. I'll get in touch with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mala.
Okay, other questions for Mark?
JT, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, JT.
Hey, thank you, Mark, for the information. I don't want to drag you off too deep into the technology and your specific product offerings, but I am interested to understand your perspective on the threat vectors posed by artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how we will be able to.
When I send out the file up to this meeting.
Okay, so let me grab that real quick and put that in the chat so you guys have it. So the 5-year action plan did not require a formal comment period, but we did post it on the website and we are taking feedback. The 5-year action plan is a high level kind of strategy. It's an evolving document that we can add and adjust, you know, as the environment changes over the course of this BEAD planning process. So we encourage feedback. You can submit it directly through the website. You can call Sandeep, you can call me, we can email, however you feel that you want to submit any feedback on that. So I'm sorry, was there a question? Nope. Okay. But the 5-year action plan, it's a large document, but really the key points are the goals and objectives for the BEAD program, identifying needs and gaps, identifying obstacles and barriers, and then putting some key strategies in place for implementation on how we're going to, address the rest of this, project over the next, 5 to 10 years. Is that it's the first step in the planning process. There's actually 3 documents that need to be submitted before we get access to the money. So now we're shifting our focus on the initial proposal. The initial proposal is due December 27th. It's broken into 2 parts, volume 1 and volume 2. Volume 1 is the challenge process. So we're working on that now. We're hoping to get that submitted to NTIA before the December 27th deadline, because that sets the timeline for when we can actually execute the challenge process. There is a formal comment period for that volume 1. So when we build this timeline out, we'll make that available to everybody and put it on the website so you can, be looking forward to that. We anticipate that comment period sometime end of October, November, when that will be available. So like I said, that's going to identify the challenge process that the state's going to undertake. The actual challenge process will be sometime January, February of 2024. The second part of the initial proposal is what we call volume 2, also due December 27th. And that is all of the subrecipient, the funding piece of it, the criteria for funding, the subrecipient requirements, all those kinds of things, how the state's actually going to go about the subrecipient selection process. We have to have those 2 volumes submitted by December 27th. They have to be approved by NTIA before the funding is released sometime, spring, mid-year 2024. If you look at the 5-year plan, we have a high-level timeline. We really don't anticipate releasing any kind of funding until late 2024, early 2025, by the time all of this planning gets completed and approved by NTIA. And there's also a huge data analytics piece to this that we're looking at, financial cost analysis and all kinds of things that are going to be put in place for this subrecipient selection process. So more to come on that. Right now, for our stakeholders, we're asking for feedback on that 5-year plan. Like I said, it's a living, breathing document, so we can, update that as needed. And then, shifting into that initial proposal. I'm happy to answer any questions, here today on that, or, you can reach out to me, anytime, and we can talk about any part of that plan. Let me see. Does anybody have any questions right now on that 5-year plan before I move on?
So Karen, I would like to talk with you about maybe we can schedule a separate meeting of the task force and kind of walk through it, and where we have time to spend on it rather than, trying to do that today.
Yeah, and that's appropriate, Steve. Yeah, because it's kind of a big document. So
Well, I just had one quick question, Karen. Will County Managers Association be involved with helping to develop and provide feedback for this plan?
So the County Supervisors Association?
Yep.
Yeah, the County Supervisors Association did send out an email to all the county managers asking for some comment and feedback. So I think their intent is to gather that and then submit some documentation. But the counties themselves certainly can do that on their own. They don't need to go through CSA. It's up to you guys. You can do both.
Okay, so would that come directly to you if they had feedback or comment type direction?
So the feedback, the official feedback would go through the ACA website. There is a when you click on the plan, you can provide the feedback and say what section, but if you want to talk through something, Sandeep or I are available, obviously to do that.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Karen. Thank you.
And Mala, you have your hand up. You have a question or comment?
Just a question for Karen. Karen, when you're talking about sub-recipient selection, is that going to be at a high-level selection, or do we have to talk about the lowest level of a recipient? For example, would the sub-recipient, if the libraries were receiving something, be the state library and then we allocate to the libraries, public libraries, or would it be directly, we have to tell you which public libraries would need to be sub-recipients?
That's a great question, Mala. The sub-recipient selection process is going to be the process, not the actual selection of a sub-recipient. That will come later, in the process, later in 2024. So this is really to identify for the infrastructure what criteria we're going to set for standards, for financial requirements for subrecipients, just the cost thresholds for building out in certain areas. We have high cost areas that we have to identify. So it's whether we're going to allow for subrecipients to basically kind of apply for whatever region they want, or if we're going to go in an area region where we select the polygons and say, okay, providers submit, for this area, or if we're going to leave it open and see what kind of, submissions we get. So all those things are going to be analyzed, through this initial proposal, and then we'll execute that later in the year. Does that answer your question, Mala?
Right.
So I don't think to be specific, it's not going to be that granular that you as a library have to identify the sub-libraries and all that.
Right, because that involves a process that we might have to start right away,
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Other questions or comments for Karen? So Karen,
Okay,
before we move on, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I said, you're being too easy on me. I was like, gearing up.
Well, actually, two things. You also have an announcement about a change of staff.
I do. I was going to get to that as well. Lillian Lee was recently named the digital equity manager, and timing just stinks. And she was offered a position in the private sector back in the education field that it was just something that she just couldn't offer. She couldn't refuse. Just horribly disappointed that she's left ACA, but that's kind of the way it is in government sector. It's very hard for the government sector to compete, against the private sector, especially in these times. So There is, I don't think it's posted yet, but we'll be in a search for a digital equity program manager. That position will be posted through ACA. So if you or you know someone that's interested, please have them reach out to Sandeep and, look out for that job announcement. Steve, I will send you that link when it's posted so you can blast it out.
Absolutely.
Lillian also was kind of playing double duty because she was the grants and compliance manager. So she was, when she moved over to digital equity, we didn't have a grants compliance manager. So she was kind of helping with that as well with the ABDG program. So now we've got two holes that I'm trying to, navigate here. But that position as well will be advertised soon. So again, if you know anybody that has experience in, federal grant management with CFRs, not necessarily broadband experience, but I'm really just looking for someone that has some familiarity with the CFRs and federal funding, and U.S. Treasury guidance would be helpful, but we can teach that. So ABDG, that program, I know I see a couple of you folks on that are recipients from that. All those contracts have been executed except for a few that are on a extension right now. We expect those to be executed here pretty soon. So a lot of those projects are in their engineering and permitting phases. So we should see some activity in your communities really soon, for that $100 million. We are going to be setting up a grants management solution, a software portal for those subrecipients to interact with ACA on all the grant documents. But we're going to set up kind of dashboard update so you can see the activity happening with these projects. So if you're not in the community, you can look and see where we are in professional association. So I see there was Phil, PJ.
And so JT, you have a question or comment?
Just a question on that DEI position. Can you just give an overview of that? And my primary question, is that like an HR oriented kind of a thing, or is it a community program management kind of a thing? Asking for a friend.
Okay. Yeah, JT, I wouldn't say it's an HR type position. It's the digital equity program manager. One of the programs that ACA administers is the state digital equity planning grant. That I was going to get to that report as well. That is under development with our partner contractor, Digital Equity Institute. That report has a public comment period that will be hopefully mid-October. That's our target, to have that released for public comment. That outlines all of the goals and strategies and implementation that we're going to address with the digital equity capacity money when that becomes available. Again, these are all kind of the first step in the planning process before NTIA releases the funding. So the digital equity program manager is going to be that key state person that's going to work with all of the digital equity programs at the nonprofit and county and local levels. They'll be working with the workforce development folks to just all of those things that we've identified in that digital equity plan to help facilitate that for the the state program, education outreach, all those types of things, working with our cybersecurity folks, to ensure that connectivity between all the programs and all the things that we need to do to accomplish on the digital equity side.
Okay, so it is a traditional, more or less, program manager kind of a role.
Yes, and they will be overseeing, all those capacity grants once those become available and awarded, not necessarily for the grant compliance, because that's what the grant compliance person is for, but it really will be that conduit between ACA and all of those program recipients and others, that are in the digital equity arena.
Okay, one last question. this might be obvious to some, but not to me. Is Arizona residency a requirement? And is it a remote or is it a on-site type of position or hybrid?
You know, the Arizona residency that's a good question. I'm not sure that will be an ACA question, but I can follow up and see if that will be a requirement. I know just recently ACA is transitioning back to kind of a hybrid model where the staff are coming into the office a couple of days a week and then remote a couple of days a week. I'm not sure if that's going to be the norm, or they're going to fully transition back to the office. But right now, that's the model that they're using is more of a hybrid.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, anything else for Karen? Well, thank you, Karen. It's always glad to have you here, and really appreciate your making the efforts to be at our meetings and to give us an update and represent ACA and Sandy in these meetings. So really appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve, for giving me a few minutes. And you all know me and have my cell phone, and my email is all over the place for AZBSN. So if you need me, just holler.
So Karen, I guess another item that was on the agenda that maybe relates to you also is ACP, and that there's a lot of efforts now to be an advocate for ACP. Is there any plans that you're aware of at the state level? I understand, Elena, about a letter that from the governor, but do we know if there's any kind of a unified effort to promote ACP and be advocates here?
And I don't want to speak for the governor's office, but I do know that the governor's office staff are having conversations. And I know Sandeep he's got a Senate kind of tracker where he's like, okay, we only need 6 more votes. Okay, we need 5 more votes. So I know something is happening with the governor's office, that they are actively working on making sure that ACP is continued through the legislation. I don't have any specifics though, but I can follow up for next meeting. One of the things that we probably all already know is that FCC just came out and said that any high cost area that is now defined on the TIA website are eligible for the $75 subsidy, which is fantastic because a lot of our rural areas, those high cost areas, the carriers monthly is way over that $30 current subsidy. So they're all eligible for the $75 subsidy. So we're looking at a way that we can help get that word out on the availability of that. That's probably will be something that we'll work with Common Sense and Digital Equity Institute to help blanket that information. Let me see, and then I was going to mention something else about ACP. What was your other question, Steve?
Well, I guess my question is, Karen, that I think there's still a lot of folks in local governments and so forth who have really not taken, they're all concerned about what's the future for ACP, but I'm not sure that they're actually becoming active in contacting Congress about continuing that program. And so I'm wondering if there's any kind of an effort through ACA. It's one thing about the governor's office being an advocate, but it's another thing about getting local people and local governments and so forth to be advocates. And what, if anything, can or should we do? And should we collaborate with ACA, or do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, if we had a digital equity program manager, that would be great, because that would be actually one of the activities that person would, help coordinate. And so JT, that would be a key kind of role, for someone like that. To be honest, right now, I don't have that as an activity, just because of the volume of work that we're trying to focus on with the initial proposal. So I would say that I would really lean on our partners to help, get that word out, and certainly, happy to help kind of coordinate, but I really just can't take that on as as activity myself right now.
Thank you.
But
And so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Alana has posted in there the Internet for All Summit, October 24th and 25th. That is hosted by the Governor's Office. Thank you very much for that. There will probably be a lot of discussion about ACP, at that event. And another event, not necessarily event, another meeting, it is the Governor's Office has established broadband infrastructure kind of advisory council. And it's made up of, state agency heads and some other folks, that are in the broadband, realm. Their first meeting is September 11th. I don't have any agenda or anything on that yet. But that group is going to be established to help advise, the state, the Governor's Office, and ACA on everything that has to do with, the BEAD funding and broadband, implementation, throughout the state here.
Karen, I'm sorry, are there any civilians on that panel?
Yes, I don't have the list, but there are state government officials. There's a representative from the County Supervisor Association, a representative from the League of Cities and Towns. I believe there is some folks from ASU on there. There is a retired broadband expert that I believe worked in the private industry. So, there's a real good diverse group that, and then the intent is to have like working groups underneath this broadband advisory council that, could expand that, the participation, amongst just, all of the experts that are in those specific fields.
Okay, anything else for Karen? So Cindy, you just shared which is going to be my next thing, is that the NDIA has released a toolkit on how to be able to promote, ACP. I don't know, Cindy, you want to say anything more about that?
Oh, that's great, Cindy. Thank you.
Yes, I did receive an email about that last week, and so I posted it there. That's one way. They're feeling a little more hopeful. They're feeling that there's movement on the Hill, and they just they're promoting their way to get their message across that this needs to stay around. And of course, with outreach grants going on in Arizona now, the idea is the more we can get signed up, the more that the government will see that the need is there to continue this program, even if it's as a temporary measure, just to keep it floating and give the people that break from the internet service so they can get online.
I have bookmarked that already, Cindy. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Karen.
Okay. So Elaine, you have another announcement also.
Yeah, and I started to put some links as you guys were talking that might be helpful. But what I was going to talk about, and thank you, Cindy, that was something I was going to put in there too, but Digital Inclusion Week is October 2nd through 6th. And as part of that, obviously the goal of Digital Inclusion Week is to highlight and lift up all of the great work that so many organizations in Arizona are doing around digital inclusion. Obviously, that also includes, folks that are working in the ACP space with awareness and signups and all of that. And so there's a toolkit for that as well that I am happy to share as along with a couple of individual items. One is, I think I already put it in there, is best practices to engage elected officials and governments around Digital Inclusion Week. And you can certainly in your outreach talk about ACP and the need to extend that, as well as I did a tips for media coverage for any Digital Inclusion Week events or things that you might want to have highlighted. I'm actually on the national committee for NDIA for Digital Inclusion Week, and so these are all things that we've put together for organizations to use and have at the ready in their promotion of their great work around digital inclusion. So feel free to reach out to me if you want any of this stuff. Steve, I know you always send out lots of information and links, and so I can share them with you so they're all in one place.
That would be helpful.
But yeah, just I can do that after the meeting. But yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. There's some great things that groups in Arizona are doing, and the idea behind amplifying and lifting up this stuff is that you can show the governor and you can show the city councils and all of that why digital inclusion is so important in your communities, and so this is an opportunity to do that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to point out.
Hey, thank you.
Told you I didn't need 10 minutes, Steve.
Thanks. So several of you folks, Karen, I don't know if you're still there, but several of you people, Mala attended, Mala, Janet, Nicole, I don't know who else attended the NTTA, National Tribal Telecommunications Association conference this week. Mala, do you want to give us an update on what happened with that conference?
Yes, I'll give you a very brief update. I'm not still fully recovered from my dental surgery, but so if you hear,
okay.
Yes, I'll do my best.
Okay.
The NTTA, it was really awesome. There were so many tribal vendors who were there, and some of them had heard about the BEAD program, some of them hadn't heard about it, so I was kind of surprised that they hadn't. But the FCC was there with a representative from the Office of Native Affairs and Policy, and they spoke about the new tribal order and report that the commission adopted after the rulemaking that happened the last few months. And this really goes to push E-rate to the tribal colleges and universities that serve the community in their neighborhood and act as the public library for their community. So far, tribal colleges and universities were not eligible for E-rate, but now they are eligible for E-rate support. They also gave a formal definition of tribal and better identify the applicants seeking E-rate funding. They also added a tribal community representative to the USAC board that that USAC administers the E-rate program. And they've directed USAC to provide increased outreach and training to the tribal applicants. In fact, they provide one-on-one support for any tribal applicant that is either doing it for the first time or have applied earlier and have failed. So this is awesome, and this is of course for the next cycle, 2024-25. But the process begins now, because now is the time when they have to do their RFPs and stuff like that. So it was really good to hear that. We did have a presentation, of course, on E-rate by the USAC folks. They were there. They talked about the program and, especially from the service provider point of view, because there were a lot of service providers who attended that as well. On the whole, it was there was digital equity and inclusion panel discussions. Sandeep was there for a very short time. I mean, for his presentation was, I think they didn't give enough time. We could have had that session extend for the whole hour, but it was only a half-hour session. And they had 3 states present during that half an hour. New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. They talked about the BEAD money that they were receiving and the process that they had gone through so far and what they intend to do. You can imagine that would have been such million-foot overview of the program rather than a closer look at it. Yeah, and I think it was interesting. We did have the telemedicine booth, and there were people who stopped by the booth. I'm not sure I saw Janet today here, but Janet was there. The booth was well stocked, not only with telemedicine handouts, but also ACP handouts. So it was good. Any questions for me?
Good. Well, thank you, Mala. So this conference actually takes place here in Arizona every year, if I'm not
Every year.
mistaken.
Yes, the next one is on April 7th next year. And they do comp if you're interested. Of course, I was comped because I'm the state E-rate representative for libraries, but it was $350 for registration.
I know they offered to comp me last year.
Right. Can I also talk about our next telemedicine event?
Sure. Why don't you just do your update real quickly with regarding the libraries, Mala?
Very quickly. We have another event coming up, and this is on September 21st. It's at Tuba City. Again, Tuba City is one more recipient of our pilot telemedicine kit. And it's we did have an event before that to kind of kickstart, but that event was more on preventing cancer rather than, and use of the equipment to do a scan, the liver scans for people in the Navajo Nation area. But again, the main program is telemedicine from libraries. And we are doing that kickoff at Tuba City on the 21st of September. It will be at the library, 1 to 5 in the evening. Remember that the mountain time is 1 hour ahead of ours. So if anyone is planning to attend from that neighborhood, just be sure that you have the right time. And I'll give you more details on the flyer when it is ready for prime time. Yeah, that's my update so far.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Kirk, are you still online? Kirk, you still there? So Mark, do you want to talk about the conference coming up pretty shortly?
Sure. Let me grab this post. I have been chatting with Kirk on Skype, and he is actively seeking the discount code. And then I'm sure you can publicize that. So coming up September 19th, live at ASU Sky Song from 1 to 6, there'll be the Commerce Authority and the Tech Council's 7th annual Smart City and IoT conference. There are several panels about Smart City, about IoT and the edge, but I will be closing out the day with a 45-minute fireside chat, the $1 billion fireside chat, Arizona Broadband Roadmap session, interviewing Sandeep, and then opening that up to public questions from attendees. So that is an on-site only event, not hybrid. Alana's asked if there's a code yet. I did mention that Kirk is actively seeking that code, and we'll get it to Steve to publicize. So
I sent a note to Kirk yesterday that we need that code. So
right, we absolutely do. So the nominal rack rate to attend is $40 for for Czech Council members, and that does include anyone who's on the board of the ATIC. We have an annual membership with the Czech Council. You have to reach out to Daryl Emerson. There's no automatic code for that, and $55 for non-members. Usually the discount is $15. So I'm assuming the attendance for AZBSN members who are not Czech Council members or ATIC board members will be $40 after the code.
And if anybody cannot afford to pay that registration fee, let me know, or Kirk, and I'm pretty sure we can get you guys comped.
Okay, I don't know that I'd have said that, but God bless. Hope that's true. Czech Council's probably a little less flexible than some groups on comping events, but Kirk can work on that. He's worked hard on making the program for this. So,
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else about that conference? So we encourage you all to be there. I will actually be there. We'll probably have an AZBSN table as we did last year, and we hope to see you all there. It's a good opportunity for doing some face-to-face networking that we don't get to do very often. So encourage you all to attend.
And I am hoping that I will be able to arrange for a videotaping of at least my fireside chat with Sandeep, and that we make that available publicly sometime after.
So Mark, I did send a note to Kirk yesterday, and I know that, as you mentioned, that there wasn't a plan for this to be remote. And I know also the last couple of years they had some technical challenges in making that happen. But since they're going to be at SkySong, they certainly have the technology and support to do that. So I sent a note to Kirk saying, maybe can you rethink that whole idea, but we'll see.
Yeah, the Tech Council has moved away from hybrid events. It's fine for you to ask. I would welcome it too, but they generally have moved away from hybrid events.
Okay. Anything else?
What?
I'm sorry. Who was that?
Yeah, waiting for the code, and we are gonna film Mark's session with Sandy.
Okay, that's the second best number of the year outside of January, was 1.9%. You adjust for inflation rate, spending up 6 cents. That's
Sorry.
stuff.
This one.
Is that you? Was that you, Kirk?
I'm trying.
Okay.
I was trying to respond. I'm sorry. I had too many screens going at the same time. I am going to have a camera crew there to record the $1 billion fireside chat. We can't do the whole event hybrid, and we can't transmit real time, but I do intend to use that for a lot of promotional stuff for promoting AZ Telecom and AZBSN.
Okay. So Kirk, please try to get that code to me ASAP.
I literally just sent another email to Zach, Daryl, everybody. Carbon copied Carla. Mark had mentioned that maybe Carla had gotten the codes in the past.
Well,
Mark,
I can
still
check.
there?
I'm actually going to be riding up there with Carla. I just saw her the other night. So if she needs to
Mark
do
still
that,
on?
I will be in touch with her.
Yes, I'm on. But you know, Deborah or Daryl hopefully will respond with a code.
Did you see the emails, Mark?
I've
okay
been talking online. Deborah, Zach, here it is. Hi all, don't forget to, well, I saw an email for her that I assume is to the IoT committee. I have a code for that. I don't know that that is the code specifically. So you may want to confirm that that code.
No,
is-
Mark, you got like 4 emails there. That's the last
Okay,
one
well,
that Deborah
let's not
sent.
do this on here online here. You guys can.
But Steve, just so you know, I'm going to forward that to you.
Okay,
Carla's too. So we'll see. And I'll add Steve to that one too. So you can ping Carla.
okay.
The last one from Zach was she's leaving it up to Daryl. Mark,
Okay.
no worries.
Okay, so one last thing, Cindy, do you want to say anything about the Digital Inclusion Network? You still online?
I am. Yes, just that I've rejoined the group after my hiatus during my time at the ACA. I'm really enjoying being back. It's fun to have new members showing up, new people interested. I will put my email and phone number in the chat so people can let me know. The Arizona Digital Inclusion Network is just a digital inclusion focused group where we meet bi-weekly and talk about digital inclusion topics and support the work of other organizations and individuals who are doing that sort of work around the state. And as was mentioned, Digital Inclusion Week, let me get my page up here, is it's a national week, and this year's theme is building connected communities, which I think is really interesting because the new way we're looking at digital inclusion is as ecosystems, and which takes community. So that is October 2nd to the 6th of this year. We are ADEN is supporting other organizations in what they want to do for weeks. We don't have a specific activities planned for ourselves, but I know the libraries are putting out word and looking for individual libraries to do events and activities, that sort of thing. And I know AZBSN, the computer refurbisher out of Mesa, is very interested in supporting people or organizations that want to do digital inclusion activities in the communities. So that is all I have for today.
Hey, thank you, Cindy. Are there any other announcements today? Going once, going twice. So I'm not going to do kibitzing today. I have to be out of here very shortly. And so I don't have the time to do that today. But anyway, thank you all. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Steve. Bye.
You bet. You bet. Thank you all.